many of us are willing to tell our friends the truth? A true friend stabs you in the front. Your enemies are the ones who stab you in the back and tell you everything's going to be fine. And by the way, that is a real question, because I know the truth is that a lot of us will choose the false reality because it is more comfortable. That isn't a value judgment. That isn't a matter of saying anyone is stupid, if there's something wrong with you. Just recognize it for what it is. Because if that's the case, then the truth isn't going to hurt as much, because you're going to be living in accord with it. You're going to be supported by it. Truth is like that. It's like an ocean that when you're on it, it lifts you up. It takes you where you need to go. Try to swim against the ocean, see what happens. It doesn't matter if you believe that you're swimming in accord with the ocean. If you're swimming against the ocean, you're going to find out. If you're living against truth, against reality, you're going to find out. Now, I don't tell you this because I think it's going to change anybody. I don't think it will. But you can never say that nobody warned you. I don't know. Maybe I should just tell you that everything's great and wonderful just the way it is. Things are spectacular. Then I'd be lying to you. And I'd be no better than everybody else, man. For some reason, the world could not get along with the holiest man who ever lived. And yet somehow it gets along spectacularly well with you and me. In fact, it even will promote us in the algorithm if we do the worst possible stuff. In fact, almost the more degenerate we are, the more the algorithm promotes us. And yet, if we're truly compassionate and we tell the truth, I don't know, you tell me if there will be room for you among your friends, if there will be room for you among your family. I promise you, you'll have room in this classroom. But I can't promise you're going to have room among the people around you. Hell, I can't even promise I have room in this classroom after what I'm telling you today. If you're only going to tell the truth one last time in your life, at least tell the truth about that. Why do we take that to be such a good thing, to feel for others? Like right now we're saying a lot of stuff that is just, it's almost like we're taking a lot for granted when we say things like, you should be compassionate. Why? And even then, by the way, what does it even mean to be compassionate? So for example, I think I've told you before that we were explained that during COVID, you guys all lived in like one-room apartments with like 10 family members and no Wi-Fi and barely any running water. And you guys were all like embarrassed and ashamed of your families and where you live, which is why you wouldn't turn your cameras on. It's not because you guys weren't actually there or that you weren't actually showing up or that your Wi-Fi worked perfectly well for your online games, but for some reason you had Wi-Fi issues for classes. We were supposed to be compassionate and understanding. Is any of what I just said true? You know, why wasn't your camera on? Because you weren't there, or because you're still in bed. You know, and was the Wi-Fi working? Of course it was. By the way, we know this to be true because we can look at, Cox publishes that data about their Wi-Fi networks around San Diego. All we had to do was just click on a link to find out if the Wi-Fi in your area was working. Of course it was. In fact, they boosted signals during that time to make it more reliable. Surprise, surprise. Even though there was a greater tax on the Wi-Fi systems than ever before, it was the most reliable it's ever been during that period. But pointing out the absolute truth about how people would just absolutely lie to our faces for some reason to avoid education, we were supposed to be compassionate. So was it compassionate to sit there and pretend like your lies and bullshit were actually the reality? Or is Scanlon mean for pointing out the truth right now? You don't know, my Wi-Fi wasn't working that one day. And then when you restarted it, what happened? Worked fine for the games, worked fine for your phone. That's different. Come on, man. Be honest about it, that's all. So which is the compassionate view? To point out the truth? Because then we can point out and say, that made you a worse person. It made you better at lying. It made you better at making excuses. It meant that you essentially went a year and a half with just about zero education. Or is it compassion to say, oh, one-room apartment, 10 of you. By the way, I'm not bullshitting you. That's a cartoon that they sent out to us. They sent us that stupid picture of like two little girls sitting in a Taco Bell parking lot somewhere trying to get Wi-Fi so that they could, do their homework assignments. It wasn't a true picture, by the way. It was bullshit, and it wasn't even from that time period. But who cares? It's the idea that matters, right? Not the truth. Is it compassionate to point? That's why I asked that question, like, what is compassion? Because we take it to be like it's obvious to us what that thing is, but it's not so obvious, man. It's not so obvious. You had your hand up, man.
One quick question: what does it mean to be compassionate? I think being compassionate is just being empathetic, and then it could be categorized in that simple saying of treat people how you want to be treated. But I also feel like it's reassuring for yourself in like a subconscious way, because like the more you know it's possible for you to empathize with someone, makes it like you can know that it's possible for people to empathize with you and understand you and put themselves in your shoes if you have the ability to put it in others. Like at least you know it's possible. I feel like that's why it's important to be compassionate, because it's better than not understanding. I feel like human connection is just like you have like billions of people in the world, and it's just a waste to not try and be open-minded to another person's life or perspective. And
So,
yeah,
right.
and I was gonna say, like being compassionate is what gets you to learning more about people.
Okay. Right. We're still not any closer to understanding what that word means, though, compassion.
It's not
But-
empathy.
They're different words. Compassion, empathy is to just feel what somebody else is feeling. And by the way, there's a danger there when we restate that golden rule. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. Should you be treated the way you want to be treated, or should you be treated the way that you should be treated? I don't know if any of you guys are going to be on a jury someday, and you're going to look at somebody who committed murder, and you have the family in the courtroom having lost a loved one, and you vote not guilty. Why? Because if you were on trial for murder, even if you killed him, you'd want to be found not guilty, right? You'd want to get away with it. So you should treat people the way they want to be treated. You treat people the way that you want to be treated. So if I commit murder, I'd want to be acquitted of it. So therefore, I should quit the other murderer too, right? Or should we treat people the way they should be treated? And that, of course, then gets down to what the real root is of that golden rule. It presupposes that we want to be treated the way that we should be treated. Not just out of desire. I murdered somebody, I want to be treated the way I should be treated. I should be sent to jail. I should get the death penalty. Whatever the penalty is. I should want what's right. I shouldn't want what's expedient. I shouldn't want what's easy. I should want what's right. But that's a really hard view to take, man. How many people want justice for themselves? If you've got those two views, you can get justice or you can get grace. Which of those two do you want? We have the idiot plan, as we call it, the modified graduation plan, where you can skate by with 40% fewer credits. It's like, oh, thank goodness. Does that really make you better? What lesson does that teach you? Then you can skate by in life, and then meanwhile, some people actually earn a high school diploma, the bar for which, by the way, is so incredibly low that you're more likely to trip over it than you are to come under it. Or is it better to get by with almost half of what actual real people do? And what's the purpose of that? Understand what it is. They treat you like idiots because they think you are idiots. That's the point of that cartoon that got sent out. That's what they think about you. They think that you live in a one-room mud hut somewhere with 9 other family members and no Wi-Fi, and that you're too stupid to figure things out. So therefore, they have to step in and fix your problems for you because you're not smart enough. Understand that that's who is planning your education largely and planning your future largely. That's what they think about you. It takes a little bit of intelligence to realize that. If you sit there and you're like, thank goodness that I'm being treated like an idiot, and those people who are treating me that way aren't going to have to live with the consequences of how you develop. They'll be long gone. They'll be long dead. That's done by people who don't really have a stake in it. They're going to be fine either way. They're already in those positions of power. Are you? Are you going to be fine? Are you going to develop? Because as low as the standards are, you're not competing against yourself in life. You've heard this before, I'm sure. You have no competition but yourself. Okay, so if that was the case, would you get into college? Of course, because there's no one competing against you, just yourself, and I can always beat me, so therefore I get into any university I want. We're all going to Harvard, right? A lot of times things sound good until you stop and actually listen to them, and something makes sense until you think about it. My point is that once you become aware that that's their view of you, once you become aware that that's kind of the goal of it, the plan of it, it takes a little bit of intelligence to realize that. And if that's what people think about you, there should be a little bit of pain and suffering there, because if you're buying into it, it's true. If you're buying into it, it's true. Now, I'll ask that question again. I'm telling you something that's absolutely true. Show me where the lie is. Is it compassionate of me to come in and tell you the truth? Or is it compassionate of me to sit here and just say, guys, you're all wonderful and spectacular just the way you are. Little bows of sunshine and rainbow sprinkles. The world is your oyster. Things are going to work out perfectly for you. I know you've heard that data about how like your generation is the first one that's going to have a lower standard of living than your parents did. Don't worry about that. It's okay. You'll be fine. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You know how your generation is the first one to come along that has a lower life expectancy than your parents. You guys will live less long than your parents. The first time in human history. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Remember, rainbows and sprinkles, you're all just little rays of sunshine. The people who are telling you that are the ones lying to you. So I guess the question becomes, which is more compassionate? Those lies or the truth? Because the truth only the truth only hurts if you're against the truth. This wall only hurts if I run into it. The truth only hurts if you're running against it, if you're trying to fight against it. If you embrace the truth instead, it's not even a wall, it's a pain reliever. It helps you to understand the world as it really is. That way you can function in the world the way that it really is. And sometimes the ways in which we function in the world, it causes this deep sadness. It isn't so much that it's the thing that characterizes all of life, of course. Pain and suffering, they're inevitable. For who? Well, for a large intelligence and a deep heart. It isn't so much that if you're smart, you see how messed up the world is. Now, if you're smart, you recognize the nuances of it, of those difficulties. Like I'm telling you right now, some of you are looking at me very angrily and shutting me out because I told you something that nobody else has told you before. Because it's easier for people to come along and tell you what you want to hear. But it isn't better for you, for sure. And if I were to ask you before I start talking, you guys want the truth or do you guys want to lie? Most of us would say, we want the truth. Where's your truth? Now the truth, again, is the very thing in the universe that sets you free. It sets you free from these things that tie you down. Because it's the unreality. It's this attempt to try to live separate and distinct from reality that holds you back from becoming what you otherwise could be. You think about that. You have a system that's telling you it's better for you to do 40% less achievement. That means you're going to be only 60% of the person you possibly could be. And that's of course a trend that's going to follow you throughout life. And it's not just you, by the way. Like I said, you're not just competing against you. You're competing against people from other schools who are not doing that, who are holding their students actually to much higher standards. And then that's when we look at the world and we're like, that's for them. That's for the Harvard people. That's for the Stanford. That's for the rich people. And I know Stanford once in a while will come to us and go, let's pick one of you. There's one of you. Come on. You see, we're compassionate. We're taking one of you in. Never mind the fact that, what's the dropout rate for that? Almost 50%. But it's okay, we're compassionate because we brought you in, we made you feel like you belonged for a little while. Yeah, you weren't ready. Yeah, you weren't prepared, but that's okay. It's better to bring you in and have you fail at a level that matters because that's more compassionate. No, is it? If your friends come to you, what would you rather have them tell you, the truth? Or better yet, would you rather tell them the truth? Now that's probably largely where it comes from. How many of us are willing to tell our friends the truth? A true friend stabs you in the front. Your enemies are the ones who stab you in the back and tell you everything's going to be fine. A true friend will tell you the truth. What happens if you tell the truth? Well, the truth is like ice cream, man. Everybody likes ice cream, but not when they're shoving it to you by the gallon. How many spoonfuls of truth are you ready for? Do you want to live in the truth? Do you want to live in that tub of ice cream? Or would you rather live in a false reality? And by the way, that is a real question, because I know the truth is that a lot of us will choose the false reality because it is more comfortable. And that isn't a value judgment. That isn't a matter of saying anyone is stupid, if there's something wrong with you. Just recognize it for what it is. Because if that's the case, then the truth isn't going to hurt as much, because you're going to be living in accord with it. You're going to be supported by it. Truth is like that. It's like an ocean that when you're on it, it lifts you up. It takes you where you need to go. Try to swim against the ocean. See what happens. You're going to burn yourself out, and eventually you're going to drown out there. It doesn't matter if you believe that you're swimming in accord with the ocean. If you're swimming against the ocean, you're going to find out. If you're living against truth, against reality, you're going to find out. And all of the putting off is not, the putting off of growing up, the putting off of reality, the putting off of, it's going to catch up eventually. Now, I don't tell you this because I think it's going to change anybody. I don't think it will. But you can never say that nobody warned you. Hopefully, at the very least, you can start to ask yourself, which was the more compassionate approach to take? And what approach will you take in your life? You'll find that this is one of the big problems in life. People just don't think of others. We're so big on compassion, compassion, compassion. Why don't we think of others then? You doing that jams up everybody else. Does it really? Do you sit there? Does it gnaw on your conscience, the fact that or are you even aware of it? Are you so oblivious to the world around us that we don't even notice when we're jamming everybody else up? And even if we did, do we just kind of like, oh, my bad? I'm a Capricorn. I don't know. Maybe I should just tell you that everything's great and wonderful just the way it is. Things are spectacular. And I'd be lying to you. And I'd be no better than everybody else, man. I'm not telling you this because this is going to make me popular, because this is going to make me loved. It's going to do quite the opposite. That tells you something really important, man. If you tell the truth, if you're and that means if you're truly compassionate, what's your payoff for that? Think about some of the most truthful people in history. What do you got? What happens if you tell the truth? JFK came along and told the truth about the CIA and what we were doing to destabilize countries around the world, so he went to disband the CIA. What happened to Kennedy?
He died.
Yeah, shot. What happened to, Gandhi? Gandhi came along and had peace, love, owned almost nothing in the world, and was able to stare down the British Empire to free his people. And what was his reward for telling the truth there? Yeah, shot. Anwar Sadat signs the first peace agreement between Israel and the Arab countries in the Middle East. In fact, they're so happy for him in Egypt that they decide to have a parade for him. And they tell him, literally, sit up front, wear something really bright. And what do you suppose happened to him when they had that parade for him? He got shot. Yeah. Lincoln decides to bring the Union together, rid it of slavery, this ugliness. And what happens to Lincoln? Yeah, shot. John Lennon took a break from his busy woman beating schedule to write that beautiful song, Imagine. Imagine there's no heaven. Imagine there's no possessions. Imagine there's no domestic violence laws. I can get away with beating the shit out of every woman in my life. But we don't remember him for that. We just remember him for peace and love. But maybe it's not compassionate for me to point out the fact that he liked to abuse every woman that he ever met in his life. Maybe we'll just remember him as the Imagine guy. But he tries to change the world, and he gets shot. So if you try to change the world, what's going to happen? You tell the truth. Yeah, at least Socrates didn't get shot. Socrates came along and told the truth, and what happened to him? He just got forced to drink hemlock. They hadn't invented guns yet. Good for him. He was just sentenced to death. At least Jesus wasn't shot, right? Yeah, he got crucified. And that's an interesting story set in itself, man. This is a guy that no matter what your religious beliefs are, whether you're religious, whether you're atheistic, most people kind of agree, Jesus, pretty all right guy, man. Pretty all right guy, peace and love and, unity. And yet what happens to the guy? When he's born, there's no place for him in the inn. He has to be born in a manger outside of the city. And then as he grows up, he goes to the temple as a kid. There's no room for him in the temple. The temple casts him out. And then as he grows older, there's no room for him in his family. Even his own family casts him out. And then even when he's crucified, there's no room to bury him inside the city. That city gets rid of him too. This is the guy from the day he was born to the day he died, always found himself as an outcast. And yet, for some reason, the world could not get along with the holiest man who ever lived. And yet somehow it gets along spectacularly well with you and me. In fact, it even will promote us in the algorithm if we do the worst possible stuff. In fact, almost the more degenerate we are, the more the algorithm promotes us. It gets along wonderfully well with you and me. And yet, if we're truly compassionate, we tell the truth. You tell me if there will be room for you among your friends, if there will be room for you among your family. I promise you'll have room in this classroom. But I can't promise you're going to have room among the people around you. Hell, I can't even promise I have room in this classroom after what I'm telling you today. It takes a large intelligence to be aware of some of these things and to understand how deep, how meaningful they really are. It also takes a deep heart to tell you the truth, because somebody who's willing to tell you the truth is willing to take the scorn, is willing to take the hatred for it. Hell, we just saw some people who are willing to get shot over it. It doesn't mean that everything that somebody tells you is absolutely 100% true, but if you're doing the best that you possibly can to reconcile yourself to the nature of reality, which is another way of saying to tell the truth, then at least you're trying to live rightly in accord with it. You're not running into the wall. You're walking alongside of it. You're using the wall. The wall no longer becomes a barrier now. The wall becomes a shield. The truth is no longer a barrier to happiness. It becomes a shield against unhappiness, even in the worst possible scenarios. I wonder if Anwar Sadat was dying, if he said, I should have lied instead of told the truth. Or if he died thinking, at least I told the truth. I wonder if Jesus thought, at least I told the truth. I wonder if Socrates thought, at least I told the truth. In fact, we know that Socrates thought that, because that's what he said. To run away from telling the truth would be to run away from my very nature as a human being and as a philosopher. So, this is the point of the great sadness on earth. It's that you tell the truth, and people will hate you for it. You do the right thing, people will hate you for it. Why? Because every ideal is a judge. If you tell the truth, you're going to remind people that they don't tell the truth. If you live rightly, you're going to be a mirror that's held up to people, and you're going to show them how unrightly they live. So how do you know what the right way is? Maybe if we don't know what the right way is, we at least certainly know what the wrong ways are. And if you don't know what the wrong ways are, just go online, spend a few minutes. You'll find the wrong ways, and you'll know it. You'll know it. But there's a sadness that's there, because you're going to find that you don't fit in with the world. There will be no place for you maybe among your friends. Hopefully there will be with your family, but there will be no place for you at the inn. There'll be no place for you as you grow older. There'll be no place for you at the temple. There'll be no place for you in a lot of places if you go to tell the truth. But that tells you also, by the way, that those are places that are contrary to you anyway. You don't belong there. That's for the liars. That's for the uncompassionate. That's for the unempathetic. That's for the people who don't really care about you as a human being. And if you really respect yourself and love yourself, you shouldn't take yourself there anyway, because you're going to have to compromise all of those all those really good things about yourself just to fit in. And that becomes the question, is it worth fitting in? If it is, you're going to suffer for it because you're going to know that you're not real. And you're also going to know, and if you're not real, it's a good idea to look around and say, wow, that means everybody I'm with who's happy to be here is probably not real either. But then again, if you go off and you are not with a group, then you're going to suffer for that. Pick your poison, man. Pick your poison. How deep is your heart? How large is your intelligence? How much sadness are you willing to endure and to encounter for the truth? And by the way, the answer might be none. And that's fine, as long as you're aware of it, as long as you know that that's you. But if you're only going to tell the truth one last time in your life, at least tell the truth about that. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Thursday.